For today's project, we're going to be creating a 2-point perspective street. So by doing that, the first thing we need to do is find the vanishing points. We'll find the vector lines, like the perspective lines that go intersecting through those points, horizon line, and then start to create the actual buildings themselves. So first thing I'm going to do, you're going to pick where you want your perspective, your vanishing points to be in perspective. So you want to make sure they're on the same line, so they're going through the same horizon, so they need to be connected, and I'm going to choose them about halfway up. So again, in a 2-point perspective, they could be on the paper or they could be outside, and if you're doing them outside, that's fine. Maybe you just want to attach another piece so that it goes past your actual paper size. But if they're on the paper, that is fine too. So just try to make them as far apart as possible. So once I have my one vanishing point here, I'm going to draw a line. This is going to be my horizon line. So I can just keep that together. So I know my 2 vanishing points. So there's one on either side here. This is my horizon line going across the center. So I know this is the sky and this is like the ground. And so depending on where the buildings are or what side of the building I'm drawing on, these are the lines that I'll be using my ruler to go through on both sides of the paper. So first thing I'm going to do is probably figure out like the center part of your street or your building. So for this one, I'm going to have a building right in the middle. So these are going to be true vertical lines, very similar to 1-point perspective. So it's going to be the center part of our building. So it's going to go, we're looking down 2 different sides of that same building. So this is part of that same building. So to make that first side, we're making sure we're going through the vanishing point on our left, because it's the left side of that building, because this is the center of the paper. And also I want to make sure I'm hitting both of the vertical lines we have. Now for the right side, I'm doing the same thing, but just making sure I'm going through the right vanishing point. Same thing as well at the top. So we start to have our first building here. You can keep adding some more. It helps if you have them all sort of on the same line here, because it's the same sidewalk, say. So we can make a light gray line here. So we know they're all sort of coming through that one. Same thing on the opposite side. Just to give us a guide. So I'm going to start building some more of the face of this building that's facing the street, which is here on the left side. Another vertical line. Now we have a little bit of space for our next building. This shorter one. So again, going through the vanishing point. So now we start to have our face of our building. So this face faces the left side, so the right side versus the left side of the paper. And so what we're looking at here is that all the buildings on this side are going through this vanishing point. Same thing, all the ones that are facing this street, the left side, are going through this vanishing point. But when you want to make the building look three-dimensional, to give it volume, you need to go to the opposite side. So now, even though our face of our building here, which might have a door on the side, it looks like it's two-dimensional right now, it's just flat. To make it look three-dimensional, we need to go from this top point to the opposite one. So if you might need like a longer ruler, or just extend your ruler as best you can to start to give it volume. So I can't reach this with my ruler, but I have to give it my best guess. It looks like it will continue there. Same thing at the bottom. Make sure it looks like it'll go intersect right through that vanishing point. So now we're like creating our alleyway between these two buildings here, and we're starting to create volume for our individual buildings here. So the same effect happens on the right side. So I'll start to add a few more buildings here. A couple tall ones. As your buildings get closer and closer to the vanishing point, if they're really tall, they're going to be very, very pointy. They'll have these really exaggerated vanishing points or perspective lines. So maybe it might be effective for you, depending on how your drawing looks, to make your buildings that are closer to the vanishing point a little bit shorter, if you don't want them to stand out having really pointy tops. So the same effect's going to happen on the opposite side here. We're going to try to make sure these faces of these buildings are going to be potentially going through the opposite vanishing point to create that three-dimensional feel. And so if the bottom part of the building is below the horizon line, the perspective line needs to be pointing up. If the building is above it, the top of the building is above it, the perspective line is pointing down, because the horizon line is the divider there. So I'm starting to make this building here with some volume, but I need to give it the backside of its own building, because the farthest right building is taller than the one that's right next to it. So we start to have some alleyways here between our buildings. Next thing we want to start to do is start to add more of like the details for your street you're creating. So the one I'm going to do here is I'll continue this line off the paper. I'm going to create a sidewalk for our street. So we're just going to use those intersecting lines there. There we go. Same thing we want to do for the sidewalk step up as well. Give it a little depth to make the sidewalk feel three-dimensional as well. So for this, instead of being true horizontal and true verticals like what it might be in the one-point perspective drawing, what you're going to be doing is connecting your sidewalk to the opposite perspective line. So this might be a little difficult if you don't have a longer ruler. But what you could do is use two rulers together. This is a fine option. Or you can start a line and then go back and go over it again. Give it a second pass. So it's a little bit more difficult doing it this way if you don't have a larger ruler. But you would repeat the same pattern all the way to the end of your drawing. And then you go back and apply the true vertical lines to create the depth to feel three-dimensional. To start to create a three-dimensional feel for your sidewalk. Same thing, same effects apply to the buildings that or the effects you're putting onto the buildings as well. So say I wanted to add like a store window here, but a door on this side. So for a door, the left and the right side of the door are going to be true vertical lines. But the top of that door is the same way as the bottom, is in perspective. So that'd be your door. But if I wanted to make that door look like it was open, then I have to go the opposite direction. So now someone can walk into that said building. So it's big, sort of like a rug or tile floor there. But if I made a window, like if it was a storefront, so the bottom and the top part of the window are going to be in perspective. Whereas the left and the right side of that window are true vertical lines. Give a little awning to the window. So you give the opposite direction. Make that feel a little bit three-dimensional. So for 2-point perspective drawing, your options are going to be true vertical lines and then perspective lines that are either going through the left or the right side vanishing points to make your objects and your creation feel three-dimensional and realistic. That has volume and is part of your city that you are creating. So same thing applies to the windows. So I'll draw some windows here. So bottom and tops of the windows are in perspective, whereas the left and the right side of that window are going to be true vertical lines. Again, the same effect would apply if you wanted those windows to look like there's like a little shelf on the inside of that window. So you can bring it backwards. Like someone could sit there, or if there's like a thickness to that window, maybe. So that's like the thickness of the wall. Say this building had like a sign on the top of it. Same thing, so the same sign's the same design. The top and the bottom part of the sign are in perspective, whereas the left and the right side are true verticals. But now to make it give it some volume, I need to go to the opposite vanishing point. So you're starting to add some more unique characteristics to the city that you're creating by adding perspective lines, making sure they're going through the vanishing points, and making it sort of your own. So continue to do this and make your city unique to yourself. Add different characteristics, more buildings, windows, features onto those buildings. And in the next part, I'm going to do like a time lapse, and I'll start to finish up this design, add some more characteristics as well.